All right, the Cryptonairz KOL Summit Day 3 is kicking off with a panel on XRP and tokenization. I've brought some really special guests along here. I'm really excited to introduce Versan from Black Swan Catalyst. We have Ryan from NeoLaunch here. We have MetaMan X, who I've used his content on Twitter countless times in my videos, dozens of times. So he's an incredible researcher. Lady Trader Raw is with us, of course, my co-host. And we also have David from Digital Outlook. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this panel, and I'm really excited to have you guys. But let's do this. Let's do some quick intros in case people don't know you, or if they want to find some more information about you. Versan, welcome to the panel. Happy to have you here, brother. A little bit about who you are and your background, and where people can find more information about you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. My name is Versan Al Jarrah. I'm 29 years old from Saudi Arabia. Grew up in Dubai. Business owner, investor, swing trader, gold advocate, educator, researcher, investigative journalist, and macro analyst. With a small background in engineering and business, I've personally refined my skills by combining critical thinking, which is something we all have, with practical experience, which has resulted in a very powerful formula for knowledge and financial success.
Man, that was one of the best intros I've heard this weekend. So I need to brush up on my intro now after that one. Ryan,
that's my personal bio.
that was strong. Ryan, why don't you go ahead and give us your intro and where people can find more information about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, Sensei, thank you for having me on. To everybody out there, my name is Ryan. I am the head of operations for a project called NeoLaunch. Essentially what NeoLaunch is, it is an incubator / accelerator. So helping projects really get up off the ground, leading into their individual token launches. We also have a syndicate component. So essentially it is more or less like a decentralized fundraising platform that is membership based. More information about that, if you want to go to neolaunch.io, by all means, feel free. For me, I am attending solely as a fan of XRP and a fan of tokenization. I've been in the Web3 space now for about 5 years. XRP was my first major holding in the space. So I've been at it since probably about the time that the market crash happened around the COVID period, and been a holder ever since. So yeah, excited to dive in with everybody and talk a little bit more.
Love it, Ryan. Thank you, man. Glad you're here. MetaMan, go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe where people can find your Twitter and a little bit more information about you.
Yes, greetings. I am MetaMan X, a digital explorer charting the vast expanse of technology, cryptocurrency, and the threads of modern culture on X. And you can find me at MetaManX_X.
Love it.
And I'm a cryptocurrency enthusiast.
All right. I love it. Lady Trader, my co-host.
Great. Thank you so much, Sensei. This has been such great 3 days co-hosting these event or these talks with you. I am a KOL and a growth and adoption architect, also a KOL manager. I'm also the founder of Alpha Seedlings, which is a Telegram community of investors and whales. I'm pretty much a super connector in the Web3 space. And I'm also the vice president of community and influencer relations for Twin Protocol, as well as the lead advisor for Polyi and Ledger. Really excited to be here, Versan. What a great intro you had. Actually, you really pushed me to do better today because I'm like, I don't know where to begin my intro because I do so many things. How do I sum it up in one sentence? So great job with your intro. It was probably the best one I've heard in Web3. Glad to be here today with you.
Well, that's sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, knocked out of the park. All right. And last but certainly not least is David from Digital Outlook. David, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are and where people can find you?
Well, Judy and I run Digital Outlook channel on YouTube, and we're also on X, Digital Outlook 3. Spent 25 years as a senior federal officer with the tax department in Canada. Was on the scene when cryptocurrency and Bitcoin first came out ever. And boy, oh boy, did I ever learn a lesson when I kind of snubbed my nose at it at the time. And but in March of 2020 is when we entered into this digital asset space ourselves. And in that last bull run, it really did revolutionize our financial lives. And so, I was buying XRP really probably March of 2020 is the first time we bought it, well before the SEC slammed down that lawsuit. That's for sure.
All right. Well, here, let's just jump into it, guys. It has been a rough maybe 6 to 7 years for Ripple and for XRP. Versan, I kind of want to go to you first and just I ask a little basic question before we get into some more complicated stuff. But how do you see XRP being different from Bitcoin or Ethereum in the crypto space, and why do we need something like XRP for banks?
Sure. Well, I think we should start with the basics. What makes XRP Ledger really unique? It's built for speed, efficiency, transactions that can settle in the 3 to 5 seconds, and we're talking about big money, not micropayments. Something like XLM can handle, for instance. Fees that are a fraction of a penny, and you can compare that easily to the traditional payment systems like SWIFT. And that can take days to settle international transfers, and it comes with a lot of hefty fees. So the XRP Ledger can handle, they say, up to 1,500 transactions per second, making it one of the fastest and most scalable distributed ledgers of its time. I know there are some faster ones, but for institutional liquidity and moving back money value back and forth, I can see that, that it's built to handle massive volume, which is exactly, I think, what the institutions are talking about, what they want. And when we're talking about tokenization of assets on a global scale, you're talking about real world assets, stocks, bonds, commodities, even fiat currencies, creating digital representations of them on the blockchain. And this is really where the XRP Ledger shines. So it's not just about digital currencies. We're talking about a massive network here where every kind of value can move around seamlessly. And I think the built-in features of decentralized exchanges even, and the ability to create custom assets on the XRP Ledger is what makes it so primed to facilitate tokenization of literally everything.
Yeah, and you were talking about Swift there. Swift has a 6% fail rate, and it does take about 3 to 5 days on payments. And sometimes they can't even figure out where those payments actually are. So moving to a system that settles in 3 to 5 seconds would be a lot easier and a lot cheaper. And I think that's maybe what banks or some banks are afraid of, right? Ryan, so how do you see XRP currently in this current ecosystem and standing, right? I mean, Bitcoin has its own thing, with institutions wanting to chase down ETFs. Ethereum is really known for its smart contracts. XRP has been known for its payments. How do you see XRP, ruling the top, 5 or 10 cryptocurrencies? And do you see it being used globally for international or payments domestically?
Yeah, absolutely. So my perspective of XRP, I guess, is a little bit different maybe from some of the other people who might be in the audience or some of the other people on the panel. With Neolaunch specifically, we focus on building out a lot on EVM related chains, whether that's Ethereum, Polygon, BNB chain, just for a couple of different examples, because of the capabilities that currently exist within that blockchain with smart contract technology, the NFT technology, and the access to a bunch of different projects that are interconnected by that EVM. So really, that's kind of what we focus on, and I guess how that kind of differentiates my opinion within XRP is if you look at what's happening right now with the with RL USD coming to the forefront, smart contracts coming a little bit closer. It really feels like XRP and the XRP Ledger specifically are starting to gain a little bit more positive momentum into different markets that have been historically dominated by other projects. For instance, Ethereum has had an absolute stranglehold on smart contract technology since the chain deployed and ever since they really started developing into the more NFT based sphere. I see XRP getting a little bit more kind of forward momentum in not just the smart contract space, but also in stablecoins. And I was listening to this one panel to David Schwartz and Brad Garlinghouse talking about it, and they were talking about the stablecoin, bringing in more TVL onto the chain, bringing more transaction volume onto the chain, and really that's going to allow for a little bit more diversity in the kind of projects that will ultimately be brought onto the XRP ledger, in my opinion. So you have that higher volume, that higher TVL, and more builders being brought into the XRP ecosystem simply because of the technological advancements that's being brought on the chain. So really, that's kind of where I see it. I see it as a specialization technology in current state, really honing in on just perfecting the payments model, but gradually starting to make a little bit more progress towards smart contracts, towards stable coins, and really becoming a lot more in line with the industry leaders right now, Ethereum and Bitcoin in terms of its capabilities.
All right, MetaMan, Ryan did bring up RULSD. He brought up smart contracts. I mean, really quickly, do you think the reason why maybe XRP doesn't have, hundreds or thousands of developers, probably thousands of developers building on it is because the lack of smart contracts, or or is it a specialized chain for institutions and banks to move value? How do you see XRP and the XRPL?
Right. That might be one of the reasons, but I've also heard that if you added smart contracts, it would bloat the network. But then I've heard David Schwartz do a 180 on that, saying I guess he's looking into smart contracts. But the way I see it, that might be one of the reasons. But with the EVM, that could help, basically. Also, yeah, I mean, once they have the EVM, it's, what do they call it? Network effects. I guess if you have an easy bridge to the XRPL, you have more people using it, and it's a lot cheaper, faster. So why would you want to use, basically something like Ethereum?
Is that why, I personally think with RL USD coming, that more people will be prone to use that instead of something like Tether, right? In Europe with Mika coming into effect, Tether can't really be used there in that ecosystem. Right. USDC and RL USD. So, how do you see that reshaping kind of the landscape of stablecoin and the stablecoin market over the next few years? MetaMan.
What do they call it? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering what your thought was on that.
Oh, it's like what do they call it? Like network effects, right? When people start using RL USD, then they have to open up an XRPL wallet. Basically, and how I see that is, Micah goes into full effect. I think it was December 2024 and the beginning of 2025. So basically, all the corporations have to KYC, and so Tether is out of the European Union, and they need somebody. I think they're going to need somebody to replace him, and I think RL USD would be a good choice.
David, what are your thoughts on this? I want to bring you in here really quickly, and then I'll come back to Lady Trader. But RL USD, do you think that's going to be a game changer for Ripple and the XRPL, or do you think it could slow down the ledger if too many people are on it? What are your personal thoughts on it?
Well, I absolutely believe that RL USD is going to be a liquidity provider for the XRP ledger ecosystem. Not only for, trading, like when we see a lot of USDT, USDC, and things like that, it's a lot of, we see all these trading pairs on exchange, and that's where most of the retail community actually sees, the utilization of these stable coins. But from an institutional point of view, stable coins are a massive liquidity provider for moving vast sums, across borders at minimal to next to no fee when you consider the amount of monies that are involved. And when you look at the XRP ledger, and in fact, XRP itself, of course, being presented there as an eliminator of Nostro Vostro accounts with on-demand liquidity, Ripple payments, and all that. Ripple themselves have come out and said, listen, we're going to take a two-tiered approach here. We have clients, institutional clients, that want the utilization and security of a stable coin that is backed by, in this case, we have US treasuries and dollar tied assets that are going to be backing RL USD. And you've got other clients that certainly are wanting the utilization of XRP as, a means to transfer value where it can be converted into the local currency when it gets there. So I just cannot see this not being a major boon for institutional adoption and exposure to the XRP ledger. I think MetaMan makes a really good point that, if they're going to want to utilize it, they're going to have to open up wallets, and obviously be moving value through this ecosystem. And going back to what Versan had said, when you're talking about the tokenization of real world assets, you're talking about the tokenization of, securities. You're talking about the tokenization of other, financial products that a lot of major banks and institutions are utilizing. Well, they're going to want to have a balancing asset that is going to need to provide liquidity for that real world asset tokenization. And like you've so eloquently pointed out, when it comes to MiCA regulations in the EU, Tether is not going to cut it. In fact, I don't think Tether really stands a big chance in the marketplace, even in the Western world over here on this side, because look, they are dealing with some very problematic audit issues right now, whether we like to say it or not. And I don't think Tether can show and demonstrate that it's genuinely backed by the things they say it is backed. And I'll finish with this. Brad Garlinghouse himself just recently in a well publicized interview had said that, when it comes to Tether, and the way in which that, it is, they're facing so much scrutiny on whether or not they can really back what they say they have. That is a major issue. And if Tether was to go down, this was his kind of supposition, if Tether was to collapse in a black swan event, that what kind of reverberations would that have in this entire digital asset space, and I believe that RL USD, they're moving out there to make take a massive financial bite out of it, and that's what I think about that. And something maybe we can talk about in a little bit is, do most folks even understand how stablecoins make money? I don't think most do.
Yeah, just to explain that really quickly, and I'm sure you could probably do a better job, but just touching on that is usually these stablecoin issuers, they create bonds, right? And so like if they're at a 5% interest rate and they have $1 billion, they're making that nut off that 5%, and that's pretty much, I think, more money than Goldman Sachs, right? Last year, or something like $5 billion, because interest rates were so high. But if you
it's a major amount of money. Yep, that's how they make money. You're exactly right. That is how they make money. Most people, they don't realize, how stable coins really make money and what is the real benefit there. Well, it's because people will park their dollars in stable coins. And while they're parked in stable coins, these stable coins go out and they're, taking funds, investing it into, guaranteed investment certificates, bonds, and things like that. And when you're talking into the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, believe it, 3, 2, 3, 5%, big bucks.
Anyway, that's it. I love it. Before I go to Versan, Lady Schrader, do you have any thoughts on kind of anything that we're talking about here? It sounds like, I think if USDT exploded tomorrow, I think it would be catastrophic. I think it would probably be the biggest black swan event that the crypto industry has ever experienced, because a lot of things are paired to USDT on exchanges, right? A lot of different, you're talking about billions and billions of dollars across, you're probably talking about hundreds of billions across different chains and things like that. But what are your thoughts on USDT and Ripple's new stablecoin that's coming up? Do you think USDT is going to take a really big, backseat when it comes to institutions wanting to use Ripple's new technology?
Oh, I don't think USDT is going anywhere, but XRP or XRP's stablecoin is definitely going to bring in ton of volume into XRP ledger for sure. Here's one thing that I wanted to bring up as well, because it kind of brought me back to 2022 when we were actually, looking for opportunities to buy at the bottom, right? XRP was really the one that we were excited about in my community, because they had announced a partnership with World Economic Forum. Ripple had announced a partnership with them, and that was huge. It was like, okay, this is big. And regardless of what our personal opinions are about World Economic Forum, that set that aside for sure, but just focusing on the ROI aspect of it and how it made such an awesome investment opportunity, that was exciting. And then also pretty much the best thing about that was the fact, last bull run, we didn't really see the full potential of XRP. We did not see the kind of adoption. We did not see the kind of ROI that people were expecting. There were some pretty solid price predictions for that during the last bull run, but unfortunately it didn't really happen because of all of the SEC drama and everything that was going on at that point. But that situation kind of created a really awesome opportunity for anyone who wanted to buy, at the end of 2022, because that was like the best price point. But I think the whole partnership with World Economic Forum. That to me is the biggest thing about XRP. Like, okay, this is good. And then everything else that they are doing. I mean, especially I'm somebody like, growing up in Pakistan, it was like, okay, when, you are going to another country or you're moving to another country, and then if you have to send money back home, that's a painful process. I mean, sometimes the payments fail, all of these things. So there is definitely, like I'm personally impacted by that. A lot of people are like, yeah, XRP is great, but they've really never done those international global transactions. And so they don't understand the pain and the processes. Of course, with crypto, it's easy, but so many people in Pakistan don't have traditional banks, or they don't have crypto. And so how do you make that happen? And I think for Ripple to be doing all of these amazing things, it's definitely, the potential for XRP user adoption is really great. So I'm excited for this bull market, and definitely very, very bullish on XRP.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the price of the token, I think people are still in a very speculative mind. I don't think we're really talking about the full utility price of something yet. I think it's still going to be like that for some time personally. But let me come back to Versan. So 98% of countries are working on central bank digital currency. And regardless of, I know there's a lot of FUD out there, about CBDCs and governments controlling and putting dates on spending and things like that. What are your personal thoughts about, Ripple's kind of, they're partnered with several countries already. They're talking about, they're talking with dozens of countries about CBDCs. Where do you see Ripple kind of playing out this whole central bank digital currency narrative? And are countries going to be using their technology to move value?
Absolutely. But if I may, with your permission, all of you, if I can make a statement on the stablecoin thing.
Do it, please.
Okay. So with the stablecoins coming out right now, the rollout basically of the stablecoins, it really is aligned with pretty much the macroeconomic trends and regulatory developments that are unfolding in real time. So with growing inflation, geopolitical tensions, the depreciation of fiat currencies, the need for more resilient financial infrastructure, that is evident. That's there. We already know this. But the ledger's capability in facilitating the issuance of stablecoins, which represent various fiat currencies like USDT, we're going to see some in the future. I think you're going to see like a real euro, a real yen. And that's all designed, again, to provide that robust alternative to pretty much the traditional existing monetary system. So as traditional systems are facing more stress, which is, again, coinciding with everything going on in the world, you're going to see financial institutions increasingly rely on liquidity and settlement capabilities of the XRP ledger to stabilize their currencies, to stabilize their operations. So basically, the timeline for full adoption is very synchronized with some of the major regulatory milestones, such as the transition of the ISO 20022. That actually takes full effect and full swing by November 22nd, 2025, which basically indicates that global financial system is pretty much gearing up for the major transition, which is going to see the XRP ledger at the center of this. As far as central bank digital currencies, you see that central banks are exploring and actively piloting so far the CBDCs on the XRP ledger. Now, you don't get a lot of headlines from it, but I think Ripple's technology has been designed, and that's what their partnership is with the World Economic Forum and some of the other institutions like the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements. I'm sure you guys have all seen Augustine Carson's talk about programmable CBDCs, right? So pretty much that is going to allow central banks to leverage the XRP's distributed ledger technology for a variety of use cases. It's not just about liquidity and settlement and bridging currencies. They offer a platform. Ripple does, the protocol offers them a platform where they can issue wholesale and retail CBDC deployment. So I think Ripple's federated sidechains is really a concept that is going to enable the creation of private ledgers that can also interoperate with the public XRP ledger, which will provide the institutions with the privacy they need and require to maintain the benefits of decentralization and secure the infrastructure, but at the same time to issue CBDCs if they choose so. So we'll see.
Question, I know David Schwartz has been asked about the private ledger, and I've heard a clip that the private ledger and the public ledger are supposed to merge one day or something like that. Do you think that's a possibility? I mean, I know I've seen people talk about pricing on the private ledger in the hundreds of thousands. I don't know if that's quite accurate, but do you have any thoughts and feelings on that before I move on to the next question for someone else?
I mean, it's very possible. A private ledger is private, but if it's still using the same technology, you know, I mean, I really don't have an answer for that, but it's very possible that, you know, you could see them merge at some point, who knows, to the price of XRP when that all plays out in real time. But maybe you still won't be able to see the transactions. To think that you cannot build side chains on the ledger, but you can build all this other wonderful stuff. It's very naive to think that, right? So it's very possible that they could merge. I have no answer for that. So
all right, no worries. Ryan, you're definitely talking with projects, you know, dozens of projects monthly. And when it comes to tokenization of stocks, bonds, derivatives, equities, real estate, and anything pretty much of value, you know, do you see the XRP ledger as one of the companies or the crypto assets that's on the forefront of that, or are you dealing with other projects that are also working on doing that type of stuff?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sensei. You'll have to repeat the question. My dog started barking the moment you started talking.
All good. So I'm talking about tokenization of stocks, bonds, derivatives, equities, real estate, and other assets. And I know that you at Neil Launch, you talk with a lot of different projects that might be doing something similar. Or do you see XRP kind of out in their own kind of area and category working on tokenization of value and assets?
Yeah, I would say it seems like XRP is kind of on its own little island right now. When it comes to tokenization of stocks, bonds, ETFs, real estate, what have you, with a lot of the projects that approach us, and they're looking at building something out, they're looking at deploying a token, no matter where it might be. XRP at current state hasn't really been in consideration with a lot of the projects that we're talking about. You can throw that up to the current capabilities of the chain, whether or not it is a matter of liquidity, availability of stable coins, just total value or total volume through the chain on a daily basis, what have you. But it seems to me that XRP right now, with some of the projects that we're talking to, and I'll preface this by saying Neil Launch really focuses a lot on different kind of gaming verticals and metaverse verticals. So a lot of projects that might not necessarily fit the current scope of what the XRP ledger really represents right now. But because of that, XRP hasn't always been in the forefront of these projects' minds and been in considerations because of the current technological capabilities. Now, one example that I'll give is we've worked in the past with a real estate project or an RWA project called YakDAO. And when it comes to tokenization of any kind of properties that they have, they're right now looking at Ethereum or different layer 2s on Ethereum as the best possible options for them. But that's just because of the current state of the project, where the token is deployed and what have you. So what I would imagine happens for me talking to projects right now that are kind of in that launch phase is, as soon as we're able to connect and bridge over more value from the Ethereum and from the EVM based networks over into the XRP ledger, maybe that is through a stablecoin, through USD or RL USD, what have you, then I'll likely start to see a lot more projects that are really focusing in on, okay, how can we actually get connected to the XRP ledger? Because right now, when it comes to payment processing, transaction speed, transaction costs, what have you, XRP ledger has every chain that we actively work with beat, just point blank, the best possible chain for transactions. But because of the availability of liquidity and the different types of projects that are built on EVM right now, it's so much easier to get connected to different communities, different ecosystems for collaborative opportunities, for access into the top tier holders of those different communities, just because of EVM-based technology. So what I would say is, once RL USD has kind of proven its capability, once it's proven that there is a workable bridge between Ethereum and between the XRP, that's when we'll start to see a lot more value and a lot more tokenization, in my mind, heading over into the XRP ledger.
Got it. MetaMan, I want to bring you into this. You know, what are your thoughts about what we're talking about here with tokenization? You know, do you see the XRPL being used in a massive way, you know, to digitally tokenize stocks, bonds, derivatives, equities? I mean, there's the bond market, right? The derivative market. You're talking about trillions of dollars globally, right? Do you think the XRPL is going to have their fair share of those tokenized assets in the future?
Yes, I do believe, and I agree with the gentleman that was saying that with the EVM bridge, that's going to bring more people onto the XRPL because it's cheaper transactions. And also, I was just thinking about plugins. They were talking about plugins before. There's an amendment for plugins. Basically, if you write in Solidity, you just can, I guess, move it over. For all those Ethereum, all those developers, they could just simply just go over with the plugins and the bridge. So it'd be easier for them to move on to the XRPL. And I do believe, I mean, I think that was the goal in the beginning, and it still is the goal. What you stated about the bonds and everything. That's their goal, is to have it on chain.
You know, we were talking about earlier about, you know, too much congestion, maybe, right? And you're talking about a different effects that could happen. You know, when you look at something like Visa, you know, they I can't even remember. Is it 1 million transactions a second that they can handle or something like that? I mean, how do you see the XRPL scaling to higher transaction volume than 1,500, or is it always going to be kind of like the institutional boutique, chain?
Okay, yeah.
Well, it would have to.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Go for a minute,
Go
and
ahead.
then
Go ahead.
David wants to jump in. David, you want to jump in?
No, I was just, one of the things I wanted to address is something
Please.
to bring back to the private ledgers, because I do think that this has a big impact on what we're talking about here with respect to what the movement of, you know, these vast amounts. There is not the private ledger. There are multiplicity of private ledgers. Each private ledger is, you know, if you want to look at CBDCs, for instance, is its own closed system. Right from the very beginning, Ripple has demonstrated that XRP, the XRP ledger, is a bridge asset between the various CBDCs. This concept that it is the native token of the private ledgers is just incorrect. It is not. And the fact, when we talk about, you know, long-term real world asset tokenization of securities, and not the securitization of tokens, we're talking about the tokenization of these securities so that they can actually be held, custodied, managed, transferred, all that kind of stuff, demonstrating ownership. You know, that is in fact, like what Metaman is saying here, what the XRP ledger was created to be able to handle. In fact, as far as Ethereum is concerned, it cannot handle the volume of those transactions with the cost that would be associated to do it. It just can't. And this is where I think the XRP ledger absolutely demonstrates its superiority over a lot of, other technologies, other distributed ledger technologies, in that it was specifically designed in order to transfer vast amounts of, financial instruments at a significantly, almost next to nothing cost, which it is absolutely genius at. Now, smart contracts and those type of things, yes, Ethereum is, it is kind of almost a plug and play system, isn't it? I mean, you can literally, that's the way in which it was even created. It was created as a smart contract platform. But the XRP ledger was not designed for that. It was designed to solve a problem of liquidity in the world between central banks and between, these, various too big to fail financial institutions that, the Bank of International Settlements deals with. Because remember, the BIS is only dealing with central banks and too big to fail organizations. So I don't know how you can have a discussion, how we can have this kind of discussion without understanding the nature for which the XRP ledger was actually created for,
If I can make a statement real quick, guys. I'm so sorry. Is that okay?
Yeah, don't apologize. Jump in, man.
Okay, so I think, and I've stated this a lot, it's about interoperability. And I think, speaking of interoperability, that's one of really the core strengths of the XRP ledger. It was designed to connect not just with other blockchain networks, but with traditional financial systems as well. So whether we're talking about payment systems like Swift or other blockchain networks like Project Mbridge, the XRP ledger is really what acts as the bridge that can facilitate the flow of value across different platforms. So that's really also where you see Project Mbridge and other projects like ILP. Are you familiar with that one? Interledger Protocol? Anyways, it's being developed and to enable the value transfer across multiple ledgers. That's the overledger technology. So integrating both the traditional payment systems and the new payment systems, but all of them together. And why does this matter? this ties in, I think, also to the price of XRP and its value, and how much money it can really consolidate, or value it can consolidate. For the XRP ledger to serve its intended purpose at the global scale, the price of XRP would need to be significantly higher than where it is today, and we all know that. So this is not just speculation, ladies and gentlemen. It really isn't. This is based on sheer volume of value that's going to need to move across the network once we're talking about tokenizing the global economy, all the markets. So think about it. If XRP is actually facilitating the liquidity for all these cross-border transactions, settlements, different currencies, tokenized assets, etc., then the asset needs to be at a very high enough volume, price of value to support the level of activity that's needed. So it's very similar, like the stock of a company has to rise if the company itself is doing massive amounts of business.
Now, how long does that take, Rasan, right? Like, is this something that we're waiting for the current system to collapse, or is this something that we're currently waiting for regulation to come into play, and then these banks and institutions can move towards a more tokenized or blockchain future?
I think we know the direction the economy is going. I mean, well, just the population, even, we're all going digital. Everything's going digital. And this is part of that whole green agenda, which is by 2030, right? If everything's going digital, you have to have a securable, immutable, scalable blockchain technology where you can kind of slap everything onto it. And I believe that's really what XRP is here to do. So it's not just about bridging. It's not just about, and what I was talking to you about yesterday on the phone is that it's very possible that we might not actually have a major crisis, even though we are intended to. It's very possible that they use these technologies to pretty much evolve the system into something else. So pretty much their time is running out. And that's why I put that tweet out yesterday saying it's very possible that we, the XRP holders, are actually holding the banks hostage, because if with a failing monetary system, they actually need the XRP to stabilize themselves. So it's very possible that they're using the SEC to kind of buy time and shake us out because of a depreciating currency. People are actually having to sell their digital assets of the future to pay their bills, because in the rise of goods and services keeps going up. So who knows? You know, it could happen very gradually, or there could be some major black swan event, which hence the name of what we called ourselves, Black Swan Capitalists, because we believed at one point we were going to capitalize on the biggest black swan event, and that's the banking system. The banking system is illiquid. They're finished. They have nothing to go for them right now. So the only thing they can do is use the technology to evolve.
Is this why banks kind of won't build their own systems, or, you know, is that because if banks all decided to build their own kind of blockchain or whatever, it would all just be the same thing of what we have right now, all these sideload systems, and they want to use something that's, you know, proven, more decentralized, and as well as I would imagine that would be really expensive to build your own chain that's not tested. I mean, it could fail. There's a lot of things that could happen. I'd love to just pick your brain on that before I move on to somebody else.
Well, I think that ties us into the whole ETHgate thing and what's really been going on over there. It would seem that they use the SEC, they weaponize the system to pretty much buy time for themselves to go ahead and find some way, an alternative to circumvent what XRP is trying to do. And the interesting thing about this, and why we can actually validate this to some degree, is the fact that the rest of the world seems to be using this technology and getting ready to move forward with or without the US. So it seems like, and then Senator Warren, of course, you guys know how corrupt she is. She works on the Senate Banking Committee, so she's representing JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. I mean, these are the people we're talking about. But at the same time, I actually have documents where you don't have them exactly quoting this. They're not going to tell you. Secrecy is the name of the game for them. They're not going to tell you what their investments are. They're touting Bitcoin while, you know, there have been leaks in the past that JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and some of these bigger institutions, including BlackRock, are actually buying the same assets that they're attacking. So they're positioning themselves while they're still demonizing it.
I think that's Jamie Dimon's MO, right? I think they've been caught a bunch of different times for attacking.
Well, that's all their MOs, all of them. One thing people need to understand when you go to Bloomberg, or if you go to Fox or CNN, Fox Business even, I know we have some friends out there who work on Fox Business, but they're not always accurate, and they're not telling you everything that's really unfolding in real time. Their job is actually to lie to you, or at least to deceive you in some way, form, or fashion, to mislead you to some degree. I mean, look at Jim Cramer, guys. You know, he's the worst example out there. Okay,
Yeah.
Tells you
Kramer
something's
effect.
going to happen, it does the exact opposite. So they're depending that you don't see through what we're talking about here. You know, and it's quite simple actually. If you simplify all of this, what the hell is really going on in the world? There's a reset of the monetary system because today's traditional banking system and payment systems are failing. Everything's pretty much failing, and there's a reset. Which technology is it? That's the big question, right? Well, it would seem that Ripple's protocol, which leverages the digital asset XRP, is the technology that's being implemented and integrated all over. And it would seem that everything else is being built in some way, form, or fashion around it or interoperable with it. And I think that's where you get your high valuation of XRP and the high price for all of that to play out.
Well said. There was a question from a Cryptonairz member that I did want to bring up. It says there's a notion that the current financial system is weaponized for control. Will the new tokenized future just be for a quicker, faster, cheaper version of the same? How is it different? Does anyone want to take this? David, you want to jump in here?
Sure, I can take that. Well, you know, when you're talking about CBDCs, of course, central bank digital currencies, and we know for a fact that they're being utilized right now. France went out there not long ago and bought 1 million, well, I don't know how they measured it, but it was liquid natural petroleum from China, and they paid for it in the digital yuan. I mean, that right there is a pretty clear indication. Now, I think that this is really going to be metered out by the type of governments that are deploying those central bank digital currencies. Certain governments, as we know, like China, are certainly going to utilize their social credit score system and the ability to control their monetary instruments right in the their monetary policy right in the monetary instrument. So yes, there are going to be governments that are going to be have the ability to be very repressive with the way in which their central bank digital currencies will be released, in ways in which they have not yet been able to do with their current monetary systems, just because of the nature of the way in which those governments already interact with the people that they govern, right? Obviously, that's a part of it. Now, will that mean that will pan out in a global fashion? You know, I've looked at this in numerous ways. When I was a special enforcement officer and working in the underground economy, so, called the black market, we called it the underground economy, I always used to say, well, how are they ever going to get to a place where they can control rich and poor, great and small, and all this kind of stuff? There's always been a black market. Well, when you look at central bank digital currencies, where you can track the creation of that monetary instrument from the time it's made all the way through to the last 2 seconds ago and how it was spent, well, you can pretty much guarantee that there are certain industries that are going to have a very difficult time sheltering their transactions from the view of the government that releases those CBDCs. That is a fact. So is there the great temptation? Is the great temptation exists where a government could abuse their authority with the utilization of central bank digital currencies? The answer of that is an obvious yes. There is that. Now, can there be restrictions put in place? Can it be built right into the technology? And I guess we can, I would say Ryan might have some, thoughts on this issue there, in the development world. But yes, I do believe there is potential to actually make it so that there's not necessarily that, where we're able to maybe retain our anonymity, for instance, which is really big when it comes to dealing with cash. Now, I will say this too, to throw this out there. Right now, a lot of people don't even think they're under monetary controls, but they are. Can I give a pretty reasonable example?
Absolutely.
Well, an example of that would be your debit cards. You see, your debit card has a point of sale limit put on that. Usually it's about $2,500 to $3,500 point of sale limit. Now, ask yourself a question. If you're out there, you got 10,000 plus sitting in your bank account, you're down at Nebraska Furniture Warehouse and you want to buy a $4,000 couch, but your point of sale limit is $3,000. Are you going to pick up the phone and talk to your bank and say, "Oh, can you just up my?" No, more likely not. You're not going to do that at that point in time. And furthermore, it might be on a time when the bank is actually closed in terms of its customer service. So what are you going to do? You're going to pull out that other piece of plastic that they give you, aren't you? You're going to use your credit card to make that purchase. You see, the banks come back and say, well, we put that point of sale limit on just in case your debit card gets lost or stolen. Well, hey, my credit card can't it? But the spend limit on the credit card is $25,000. What you're dealing with right there are monetary controls. But we've all acquiesced to those for what? The convenience of utilizing and not carrying cash, but utilizing a piece of plastic, debit card. Now, the thing is this, right now, there is only maybe 5 to 6% of available cash for all monetary monies that are on deposit in the United States. Total. If everybody went to the bank and tried to clean their bank accounts out, there's nowhere near enough cash to satisfy that demand. The whole system would absolutely collapse. So to think that we are not already in a monetary controlled system is really deceiving yourself. We are. And with a monetary instrument that is devaluing by the day. This is another thing. The government is right now willfully destroying the purchasing power of the dollars in our pocket. It's a form of unagreed to taxation.
Yeah.
Unagreed to taxation is exactly what it is, because as the purchasing power diminishes, how has that happened? Well, it took the United States almost 150 years to get to its first $1 trillion of debt. Do you realize now that in less than 100 days, $1 trillion of debt is being added every 90 or less than 90 days, every 3 months, there's another $1 trillion added to the debt? Well, what do you think that's doing to the strength of the monetary instrument that's out there already? It's diminishing it. It's destroying it. And so when we think about this digital asset space, I'll wind this up with this. When we think about this digital asset space and central bank digital currencies, it is an inevitability. It is an inevitability, and it's already, you're seeing the regulatory framework around the wide world get thrown out there. MICA, you got Dubai that's come out with all of their regulatory frameworks, Singapore, Japan, on and on and on, Canada. I mean, it is laughable to think that the United States does not have a plan to address it, but they do. Anyway.
They definitely have a plan. I just don't know who's in control of enacting that plan. I know Lady Trader has, my co-host, has some questions that she would like to bring up. I'd like to bring her in really quickly so she can do that. Lady, what you got? What kind of questions you got?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a question, but before I do that, I do have a couple of thoughts that I wanted to add as well. One, we were talking about the stable coins, especially for different banks. I mean, PayPal has already introduced PayPal USD. So, and PayPal, I mean, their volume is increasing. I think it was like 1.5 trillion last year, and they are already increasing this year, right? And I think that's a good use case, which I think will encourage other banks and pretty much every institution to have their own stable coins at some point, which is, I think, going to happen. And it's a better solution than having a CBDC for sure. So that's my take on that one. And then second, we were talking about tokenizations of real world asset. I think Ripple really needs to ramp up some efforts there and do some strategic collaborations, because that's already happening, especially when we talk about tokenization of traditional equities, for example. I mean, Bakkt is doing it, INX is doing it, right? They're already converting traditional equities and bonds into tokenized assets that you can trade basically on chain. And so they really need to ramp up some effort, otherwise they're going to be left behind. I do have a couple of questions that I wanted to bring in as well. I know what we saw back in 2021 with XRP, that was very unfortunate. So I want to ask you guys, based on your experience, what do you think are some of the biggest risks that XRP could potentially face? Especially, I mean, the areas that they are going into or they're talking about, it's like very regulated industries, right? And so what are some of the risks that you think that XRP could face during this bull market? Versan, we can start with you.
Well, honestly, the adoption is going to continue to happen. The technology is going to be integrated fully into the systems. I mean, they have an agenda. And when I talk about this agenda, I'm not trying to go down the rabbit hole. They have a deadline. They have a mandate. The other day, some of the top global banks in the world all put out an article at the same time saying that we have a mandate to accelerate digitization for tokenization. They were talking about. So there's a deadline for this. I think what we see happening as far as the SEC, first of all, we can look at this through many lenses. The SEC, they're really just playing cat and mouse. You can look inside. There's obviously blatant corruption going on. So the only thing they could do is really delay it here in the United States. But that could be part of the Cloward Piven strategy as well. So I'm just thinking outside the box a little bit to slowly kind of hurt the US even more. And I mean, look at the US right now, what we're going through. We are being hit constantly. Open borders, you got a failing monetary system. The central bank just announced that they're going to monetize the debt, which means they're going to fund themselves, even though the monetary system is failing, at the expense of you and I. So our currency is going to only devalue, which hurts the middle class more than anything. So it's very possible that they could just delay it a little bit longer. And that kind of ties into what I was trying to say earlier. It's very possible that they need to shake people out as much as they can before introducing a central bank digital currency, maybe even to confiscate your XRP because they need it themselves for some other reasons. Who knows? So it's just going to take a little bit longer. I think it's going to happen at their choosing. We have no control of this, but as we look and analyze what's being played out in real time with the geopolitics as well and the war and everything, you can see that the BRICS nations is on the rise. The adoption of a new payment system away from the dollar-centric system is accelerating. It's happening. They just signed an agreement the other day. So very positive news as far as the technology. But something I'd like to address as well, to what David said, is the idea of a black market. If we know that technology can be centralized and controlled, CBDCs potentially, this is why I always encourage people to buy hard assets like physical gold and silver. Martin Armstrong was telling me off record the other day that there's going to be a black market when this new system comes out. And he said, this is why you need precious metals. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me with that. And people have told me I'm an idiot for owning gold. And I'm like, okay, well, that's up to you. But he said, if everything's going digital, right, why would you want to be involved in this? I said, I just want to invest in the technology because I believe it's going to be the largest, greatest wealth transfer in human history since everything is being tokenized on the blockchain. So listen, a lot of things could happen. I see nothing but positivity for Ripple and the specific asset XRP and some of the other technologies we've spoken about before, like Velo, SHX. They all have their niche that they're solving a problem, and it's all interoperable with the XRP ledger. So that's exciting. I mean, it's the greatest wealth transfer. We're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out.
Thank you so much, Versan. We were actually talking about Velo yesterday in Sensei Chat, so that's great that you brought it up as well. And I think anyone who owns physical gold, I mean, that's actually a pretty smart move in my opinion. Land and physical gold, I mean, those are two assets you definitely want to have on your portfolio. Ryan, what do you think about that? What do you think are some of the risks that XRP could face in the next bull market?
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with a lot of what Versan was talking about, first of all. But I guess the only thing that I would add is that there is a certain, legal black or gray cloud that's kind of, hanging over XRP still, and that is the current appeal that's happening with the SEC. Obviously, for those who've been following, they know that the SEC recently appealed the decision, and it's not so much the decision of whether or not XRP in and of itself represents a security, but I believe it was more related to the damages and the specific sales that constituted sales of securities, right? But with a lot of existing ventures and with a lot of new ventures, they might look at that and they might say, oh, it's still under appeal. The SEC and Ripple battle is still happening until there is 100% clarity on that front. This lawsuit is completely settled. No more appeals, no more follow-up actions, what have you. Then that's when we'll start to see a lot more institutions, in my mind, really buying into the technology and really exploring, okay, how can we build out, how can we develop on the XRP ledger right now? So in my mind, that's one of the bigger risks, in my opinion, is just the notion of, okay, Ripple is currently engaged in a battle with the SEC. That means no matter what, I might not touch it, just if I'm on the more risk adverse side, right? But once that lawsuit is settled, once I think it's the Second Circuit Court ends up going through and ruling on the different appeals for Ripple and for the SEC, that's when I feel like a lot more adoption and a lot more volume will end up putting to the network. But there is that inherent risk right now of, okay, we have a bull market that everyone is anticipating happens over the course of 2025, and maybe leading into Q4 2025, maybe Q1 2026, depending on if we're lucky. But I think, to me, there is that legal risk, but there is also the time factor. If we're looking at really capturing, the current market and a lot of these new developments happening on the XRP ledger during the bull market, and we see it happening right now with the deployment of RL USD coming up in the next couple weeks, couple months here. But will the lawsuits, will the appeals end up being settled by the time that the anticipated bull market is happening? Who knows? There is a little bit of risk kind of on that front in my mind as well.
Thank you so much, Ryan. David, you want to? Oh, go ahead, Versan. Do you have a follow up to that?
I'm so sorry. I'll make it very short. Now, you're absolutely right, Ryan, about this cloud hanging over the digital asset XRP and Ripple and what they're trying to do. The thing is, though, the longer they drag this out, they're only hurting themselves. At some point, they're going to collapse under their own pressure, their own weight, from just pretty much how the system is built. It's based on debt, which is exponentially increasing, and it's going to fail at some point. They know this. They know that the monetary system is imploding on themselves, and that's why they're making this transition. So my point, to your point, Ryan, is just if we just wait a little bit longer and try to hold on, they're going to collapse under their own weight, and they'll have no choice but to switch. So.
Thank you, Versan. Great takes there. And I actually, Ryan, one comment I do have as a follow-up to what you said. I think we could agree on the fact that risk to reward ratio right now is pretty great, though, for XRP. So, that at least as an investor, that's my take on that one. David, what are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely agree that from a sentiment point of view, I think, yes, the appeal will have impacts sentiment-wise, but on a fundamental level, I don't think it will. When my wife and I, when we were buying XRP, it was well before the lawsuit even came down. And when it did, the price significantly dropped immediately. I mean, it dropped from about 60 cents, almost 60 cents, down to like 17.5 cents. And that was almost like it literally happened within days. Bang. Well, when they came out with their appeal, yeah, there was a little bit of a shock or whatever. But when you consider we're at 53, 54 cents, we have been kind of consolidating in that range all the way through. And in fact, even just a few, 6 to 8 weeks ago, we were at 38 some cents, for the price of XRP, before we even knew that the SEC was going to appeal this decision. So I'm not really certain. I'm not positive that the impacts are going to be as severe as what they were, when the initial lawsuit was launched. I don't think so. In fact, we've seen we saw Bitwise come out with an ETF before the announcement of the appeal. And oh my goodness, I'm just forgetting the name. We just recently saw another ETF application for XRP, even after, the announcement.
I think it was Bitnomial, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so there's another one out there, and so from a broad market point of view, I don't think it's going to have the same level of impacts. I think for me, the biggest threat to not only XRP actually, but probably to all of this digital asset space is the collapse of Tether. I think that should we see something like that, so I realistically, I don't think we're going to see a significant hurdle for XRP in this next bull run. In fact, I think that we'll probably see a move that most are not expecting. And I think the biggest worry there is I think, people will, this is traditionally how it happens. Retail, as you all know, as you guys on this panel all know, mostly come in at the top, right? They mostly come in at the top when everything is just going nuts. That's when the majority of retail get into this space. That's when they get in. And what I think happens, there's two ways of fear of missing out, right? There's the FOMO getting in, but then there's also the FOMO staying in, not being strategic, not being long-term focused, not really understanding how these markets traditionally move. The reason why, like one of the biggest questions I always get is, okay, if there's over-the-counter trading, if institutions are doing this, if we're seeing the volume in the derivative market for XRP, which we do, then why don't we see major price moves? Well, that's because we're dealing with market makers that have been in this space in a major way, unregulated, being able to literally manipulate the prices of all all assets, because you could say the same argument can be made for Ethereum as could be made for Bitcoin and all of that type of stuff. And that's really what we're dealing with, a big part of it. And so for me, I think if we saw a black swan event, like a real collapse, an unwinding of Tether like we did, somewhat like UST did, then I think, that's probably the biggest threat that we're looking for in this next bull cycle, is for some hammer to drop like that.
Yep.
In my mind, anyway.
Absolutely.
No, I
And I
agree
think
with
the pressure will be put onto that through Tether and the revolving door between Bitcoin. That's something maybe we should talk about another time. But I don't know about, you guys, but me personally, I get goosebumps every time I see the things that all of us have been discussing as a community emerge as undeniable facts. It's a very powerful reminder of pretty much how blessed we are to have the opportunity to invest in something so transformative like XRP. The future really is ours to seize.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from technical perspective, I can at least say that most likely every possible FUD that's out there is probably priced in at this point for the bull run
Yeah.
for XRP. And then second, I mean, from what I understand from the technical perspective as an investor and a chart nerd, basically, that whenever we have consolidations that continue for such a long period, they create explosive moves to the upside most of the time, right? And obviously with bull run coming, I think we are going to be running in that trend, and we could see some explosive moves within XRP. I do have one more question before I give the mic back to Crypto Sensei, and this is we were talking about this smart contracts and EVM compatibility with XRPL. What do you guys think about like the pattern that we are seeing with some of these blockchains that have smart contracts? There is a lot of right now meme coins are really leading the market, right? There's no doubt about it. The meme coins are at the highest market cap right now, right, for the blockchain categories, if you compare all the different blockchain categories. And so they are like at the top. And so what happens is that whenever we see new blockchains coming out, it's like pump.fund type platforms just pop up quickly, and then next thing you know, a whole bunch of meme coins start launching on those chains. So do you think that once XRPL launches those capabilities, do you think that we could potentially see some similar moves where that would be like XRP meme coins and then they take over and then bring in a ton of volume, which of course the price of XRP would go up in that case? So would love to hear some takes here. Versan, we can start with you.
Well, I don't focus so much on the meme coins, but I'll tell you one thing: XRP and smart contracts, I think, are a very exciting combination. When it comes to the capabilities that are developed on the XRP ledger, traditionally XRP and XRPL have been known for their role in, the fast cost effectiveness of payments and liquidity provision. I think, with their self-executing contracts where the terms and conditions are directly written in the code, smart contracts, I think automatically will, maybe I'm not the best person to answer for smart contracts. I don't really talk about it too much, but.
So let me rephrase that. Do you think there could be another like AVAX right now, they are going into gaming, right? And so do you think there is a different use case here, maybe one of the different categories that you think would be more looking into that, like it could become the flagship smart chain or flagship blockchain for a certain category like RWA or DPEN or something like that?
I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right. Right. No
I don't know
worries.
everything.
That's all right.
I know HBAR plays a very big role with smart contracts too, HBAR and Algorand, but that's about it.
That's all right. Ryan, what is your take on that?
My take is that they've kind of already established their niche. It's institutional grade payments and cross-border payments, right? That's what the XRP ledger is really known for. So, to me, I look at it as they've already kind of established their niche. They've already established a giant target market, and it's not necessarily catered as much towards retail as it is towards institutions, SMEs. But obviously there are retail level applications that play a role in it. So for me, in terms of the different verticals, you look at the crypto space, generally speaking, there's been the emergence of meme coins really heavy this cycle, DPEN technologies, RWAs, and the like. And a lot of them are trying to find blockchain infrastructure that really fits their needs. But for me, I look at the XRP ledger as them already kind of having that niche, that one big thing, that one vertical that they are good at and that nobody else can absolutely touch them on. So then it just becomes a matter of, okay, that's their major vertical. What other kind of smaller verticals might be able to play a role in that? And I would probably speculate that maybe DPINs and RWAs is potentially another vertical to be migrated onto the XRP ledger here in the next couple of years. Maybe it happens during this bull cycle, maybe not. But like I said, I really think that XRP ledger has honed in on a specific technology. And it's more so going to be for them about building out the amount of liquidity and the amount of volume that's happening on that network on a day-to-day basis through that vertical, as opposed to onboarding more and more projects of a differing kind of vertical.
Well, that's where the interoperability comes in as well. The interoperability is what's going to really scale up its liquidity, which is going to increase its price and help allow all of this to take place. I think it is, again, the centerpiece in where this is all going. And right now, when you go to the internet and you type in www, that's the protocol, World Wide Web. Nobody's paying attention to it when they go onto the internet. Like when I got on the StreamYard, I didn't even think about it, right? But that's the protocol I'm using. This is no different. Ripple's protocol, which leverages the XRP, puts it at the center of it. You're not going to be thinking about it when you're sending money around the world in the future or settling an asset between one crypto or another, or moving value back and forth. You're not going to be thinking about that protocol, but it's still going to contribute to the protocol and its price. That's the way I see XRP fitting into everything here. And the beautiful thing about this is, like, how many times have you said XRP in your life? I can't even imagine. I've said it so many times this year. I can't, like, I'm in my sleep and I'm like, oh God, Prasan, not again. Don't say it. My point though is that we're a very small group of people in this space. We really are, guys. Even fewer of us who understand really what the technology's potential is later on down the road. And even fewer know how to protect it, store it. Most of the people will probably sell it if it hits $100, even $1,000. Between you and I never intend to sell my XRP, ever. That's why I invest in other assets, digital assets, because I know their value is going to be highly appreciated in the near future when all of this plays out. So I don't intend to sell my XRP. In fact, I intend to use my XRP as collateral later on down the road when I want to invest in some major project. Between you and I, guys, my dream is vertical farming. That's about $28 million. I've already done the math. My brother and I have this beautiful plan to do vertical farms in the desert in Dubai. And it's expensive, but we could use XRP as collateral or to provide the liquidity to settle such big transactions and to allow these projects to actually come into fruition. So I don't intend to ever sell the XRP. I see it being as a tool for me to accomplish my dreams later on down the road.
That's great take there. Ryan, I also loved what you said about RWA and DPIN being possibly the next vectors that they could get into more. RWA is definitely one that I'm thinking more of, and then less on the DPIN side. David, what's your take on that?
Well, I absolutely agree with Ryan when it comes to the strategic focus of, Ripple and, of course, the utilization of the XRP ledger. I mean, they are focused primarily on the institutional clients in providing a framework for a global financial system that could run on the rails that will run on it. I mean, one thing I read recently is about how Ripple, Hedera, and Atmos are working for institutional clients to be, onboarded into this digital asset space and in a way in which they will comply to the micro regulations in the EU. So they are absolutely focused on these large financial organizations. And just recently here, article that I was reading, one right over here with their custody platform, because we know they're getting into custody big time, but it's to allow for real world asset tokenization, like what you just mentioned there, for institutional grade clients. They're not, let's be honest, in the broader ecosystem, broader digital asset space, sentiment is the primary driver. That it is. I mean, it's not the utility, it's sentiment. You're seeing that in a perfect example with all the meme coins. It's all sentiment driven. When all of this gets settled out and everything's all all the regulations out there and this and that, I do not believe you're going to have 27,000 of these various ecosystems. You may have 50 to 100 tops. And out of those, even there, you're going to see a vast majority of percentage of utilization being used in probably some of the top 10. Of course, I do believe Ethereum will be there, XRP will be there, Hedera Hashgraph will be there. These are the ones I believe that long-term utilization, maybe even perhaps Cardano will be there. I'm not certain totally, but needless to say, it's going to be the ones that lay the foundational layers that everything else is going to be built on. Now, all the layer 2s, layer 3s, and that kind of thing that provide niches for various things. Oh, for sure, that's going to happen. I mean, look at smartphones, 2007 is when these things come out. Now, the function of it is a cell phone primarily. But man alive, the applications that are on these things now that don't even have anything to do with being a phone, that don't have anything to do with being a phone. I mean, I've got one on there that I can use as a level, make sure that everything, But so my point is that you're going to see applications on these various networks that are going to facilitate, decentralized apps, things like that. But to Versan's point, eventually the underlying technology that we are investing in right now is going to be seamless for the most people. It's going to be seamless. They're not even going to be thinking about hypertext transfer protocol and all that kind of stuff. Like they don't think about it now when we're going on the World Wide Web. No one's thinking about what HTTP is or how packet switching works and on and on and on. They're not thinking that. They're just thinking they punch in an address and a picture comes up. So that's where I think, I don't see, them moving in the realms of like issuance of meme coins, but that doesn't mean that, hey, if you want, you can go and build on the XRP ledger and put your own meme coin out there right now. You have the ability to do that. So, but I do agree with Ryan. I think they're going to be focused on the framework of the new financial system that is coming. And and making it possible for institutional integration, because I think the adoption is there. I just don't think we've seen the full integration of it yet.
Yeah,
100%.
no, I definitely see that. Institutions. So since they are focusing on institutions mostly, and they have a partnership with World Economic Forum, and they have recently started supporting very publicly the Democratic candidate, it's going to be very interesting to see when the smart contracts and all those capabilities are live on mainnet. How are the retail folks going to adopt that, whether they are going to build on it or not? So that's going to be very, very interesting to see. Back to you, Sensei.
Wow, this conversation is just getting better and better and better. I did want to touch on the ETFs. So, Versan, coming to you. So Bitwise was the first, Canary Capital was the second, who filed for an ETF, an S1 form. They fill an S1 form and then submit it to the SEC. Does that put pressure on other institutions to follow suit and to follow suit quickly? And if so, what do you think that does for the overall price of XRP over the next 6 to 12 months here?
Listen, I understand that an ETF is going to bring more liquidity, more use case, more traffic to it. But I don't know if you guys saw my tweet. I got a lot of attacks from that.
What was it?
I was basically telling people that an ETF, I think, is going to just drive focus away from what it's really designed to do. And the thing is, when I hear of the word ETF, I think of traditional markets.
Yep.
And traditional markets have traditionally been rigged against us, right? It's not in our favor. So when I hear of an ETF, I think about BlackRock and Vanguard, basically luring you into there to put your money into something and just kind of like distorting it, what it's designed to be. You want an ETF, stick with Bitcoin, okay? The XRP, I think, whether an ETF actually plays out in real time or not, however it plays out. But it's interesting also, I was telling a friend of mine, it's very possible that these ETF filings for XRP took place because they wanted to get a response or a reaction from the SEC to see how they were going to react. Yeah. So that's just thinking outside the box. But I just don't know if an ETF is the right way to look at XRP.
At these prices too, right? You might as well just buy the asset and hold the asset, right?
Basically, yes.
Well, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, David,
because I respect Versan a lot. I mean, you guys know that we are very close, and but when I think of the ETFs, this is how I kind of look at the ETFs, because I think you're right. I think they do open it up for larger players to kind of manipulate the scene. We've seen how, when we're dealing with the metals market, we've watched how JP Morgan has blatantly manipulated the metals market for years, had to pay a $1 billion fine almost for, doing it and stuff like that. But the deal is this: you've got a lot of these various organizations that, based on a fiduciary responsibility, cannot touch this space with a 10-foot pole. Mm-hmm. And when you give them the potential to onboard, like we're talking pension plans and things like that, of course, there's institutions where there is no fiduciary responsibility. They can take the risk and whatever, but a pension plan, primarily can't just go out and do that. So when you do bring ETFs and you bring in these traditionally understood vehicles, because an exchange traded fund is basically a type of exchange traded product, and there's many exchange traded products. Yep. And a lot of people have this kind of confusion that, well, if XRP becomes an ETF, well, then it makes it a security. Well, of course, that's not true, because you do the underlying asset in a spot ETF does not obviously have to be a security, right? I mean, you have gold, you have Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. But, we already have futures, and stuff like that with it. These spot ETFs are going to be a mechanism. Come on. It was the whole, I don't know if you guys remember when, it's slipping my mind. It was on the tip of my tongue just a second ago. But needless to say, there was a conversation being held, and you guys can maybe help remind me. It was with Gary Gensler and this big time investor. What was his name? Do you remember that? He was on the stage and he was having a conversation. He said, well, first, this is what they do. And then they get their friends in there, and then the friends, and then they get the law in there, and they want the law to come in and help them that. But ultimately they get to the point where they start, oh, well, if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And in a way, I kind of see these ETFs in this digital asset space is they're looking at it as an untapped market, a proverbial gold mine, for folks to come out. It's another product for them to sell. And look what happened when Bitcoin ETFs went out there. Was the volume insane, in the traditional space. And so I do believe that we're going to see, like Brad Garlinghouse says, even perhaps baskets of these digital assets inside ETFs. So I think that is going to come. But ultimately down the road, another thing that I foresee in the market, in the broader market, is we may end up with our own indices altogether. Something like the NASDAQ or something like that, where these assets are traded in those indices in a traditional way, in a traditional form, where institutional investors are able to come on board and do basically, what they want and how they want to do it. And that is going to just bring about broad adoption. I mean, the global money supply right now, what is it? $2.3 trillion for this entire digital asset space. Is that right? Something like that?
A little less probably. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So think of the global money supply. Do you realize that, all stock exchanges at any one time worldwide right now are about 90 trillion?
Yeah.
Then you think of, debt. Well, the debt market is in the hundreds of trillions.
350 about, yeah.
Yeah. Real estate market is about 360 trillion. Then you got derivatives into the, quadrillions, right? When you start tokenizing all of these various markets, are you kidding me? Where we're at now is just a sliver in comparison. In fact, recently, and there's an article out there where they were talking about, this whole custody provision and why Ripple is getting into the whole custody, because they believe the custody space for institutional clients by 2030 in and of itself will be worth $16 trillion. And that is just to custody the assets. So think about what the value of the assets they are custodying is going to be.
Yeah, I think Ripple wants to have a solution for every problem, right? I think they go into these meetings with these different banks or institutions and they say, hey, well, we really want to focus on stablecoins. And then they're like, oh, well, we don't really have something for that. And so they went out, they mastered CBDCs, they mastered cross-border payments. Now they're mastering stable coins, and then and I think holding and tokenization. So I think they want to have something for every person that they're dealing with. But
if I can make
yeah,
a statement, I gotta actually get off here in like 3 minutes. But if you go back, hopefully you can find this somewhere on the internet before it's been scrubbed. But Ripple on their website, and I'm not going to just quote people like Arthur Brito and some of the other individuals who worked at Ripple in the past, but long ago, they used to have this information publicly on their website saying that XRP was designed to become the next reserve currency. And then that was removed. That's not a joke. It was there once at one point. Then you had things like David Schwartz say that XRP needed to be like at $1 million or something like that. Then he kind of
Navin Gupta came flat out and said that, hey, look, they're in this space to not just take a little bite out of it, but to literally make a dent or go away.
They're supposed to consolidate and reset the system, and it's designed to function very similar to how the dollar works today. The dollar functions a global reserve currency settlement mechanism in some sense, right? With dollar liquidity plunging, you need a substitute. That's where XRP comes in again. So XRP is not trying to replace the dollar and eliminate it entirely. It's going to live and coincide with it and be help bridge it with other currencies and other payment systems. So XRP is designed to be, I think, and I keep saying this on X, the global reserve digital currency. It functions that way. It's designed to. So those are my final thoughts. And I think
I agree.
This is the greatest wealth transfer. It's important to be positioned in the system, but don't forget to be positioned outside as well. In the short term, you should have some cash on hand. You should have some metals, anything that's tangible that you can barter with, trade, in case things play out the way you're not expecting them to. You don't want to be 100% a digital system. I don't. In fact, the technology scares me more than anything, even though I embrace it. So those are my final thoughts. But man, this was a great conversation. I do have to go, guys. So
appreciate you being here, Versan. Thank you so much for all of your things that you shared. I think people learned a lot over this last hour and 20 minutes.
I hope so. I appreciate it.
Ryan, do you have any thoughts about kind of what we're talking about here? Just kind of going off what Versan said there.
Yeah, I guess the only thought that I really want to add is that, and I'll kind of piggyback off of a question that Lady Trader Raw initially was posing in terms of, different verticals maybe coming onto the XRP ledger and kind of making an impact, making a dent in the retail markets. What Versan and David were just talking about is the institutional use case, the potential for the global reserve digital asset or acting as a bridge currency. That's kind of supporting my idea, my claim there that, in terms of different market types, things like memes, different IPs, that's just not really the focus of the XRP ledger right now. It's more about the institutional use case. It's more about the capabilities as a bridge currency and as a potential global reserve digital currency. So there's a lot of different pockets in the market. You look at memes, you look at different IPs, you look at GameFi, metaverse verticals, for instance, just to name a couple. And to me, I think it's just, that's more tackling fish in a market full of whales. And, to me, I think the much, much larger use cases are going to be the more attractive ones for, not just builders, but also the retail investor as well. When they're looking at the XRP ledger as in totality, this is the kind of market that I want to be in, because they're tackling the richest of the rich, the highest of the highest possible accounts, tokenized real estate, tokenized stocks, bonds, derivatives markets, what have you. That's the appeal of the XRP ledger. So I think there's a lot of other kind of plays that maybe filter in, but I think other chains are more than capable of handling.
Absolutely.
Versan, did you have a final comment?
Well, no, I absolutely agree with you, Ryan, and I just wanted to hear him out. But I want to thank everybody, and thank you, Crypto Sensei Robert.
Of course.
Please call me later if you want. All right, we can talk some more. And Lady Trader, Miss Lady, it was a pleasure to meet with you. So, thank you.
Thank you. Likewise. Yeah.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right. Take care, Versan.
I know you're itching to jump in here, David. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I was just gonna say that I 100% agree with what Ryan has said there. I think fundamentally, Ripple's goals for XRP Ledger is to be, a foundation, And, for liquidity, for finance, in the traditional way to integrate traditional institutions into it. And then I think from there, a lot of the other technologies are just being built on, the rails. They're being built on the rails, not necessarily the XRP ledger, but just if you were to look at it like, the infrastructure for the new financial system, a global financial system, I believe that Ripple has really strategically been setting themselves up to be that onboarding avenue for a lot of institutions as we go into a new digital economy. But then you look at a lot of the layer twos that are built on Ethereum and all that type of stuff. And Ethereum even of itself is there to supply, all these various decentralized types of applications that will run on top of these rails. That's just how I've looked at it. I've never really looked at XRP as being an ETH killer or anything like that. I've never thought that the XRP ledger would ever be utilized in that way. And so, sometimes I think it's like trying to, what they used to say, comparing apples with oranges. I think that, these are totally two different iterations of distributed ledger technology, and their focuses are primarily different. They're truly different. And so, to, kind of compare, and a lot of times, remember in this retail space, people are trying to compare these assets in terms of, what return they've seen and in what span of time and on and on and on, right?
Will it pump?
Exactly. Will it pump? They are not thinking about the fundamental integration of how it's going to change and revolutionize the way the world even works. They're not thinking that. They're not. And another thing, just to point back to what Versam was saying, we are so small, a smidgen of, of the wide world in terms of like awareness. Most people, I've heard of Bitcoin. But they couldn't even actually define how Bitcoin is created.
Or how it works.
They don't know about how the miners work or the halvings or, all the, all of that, the kind of like the deflationary mechanisms that's built into it and things like that. So then to try to explain the concepts of the difference between, for instance, a smart contract platform like Ethereum and a consensus style algorithm for the benefit of the Internet of Value, sending value like XRP Ledger, they're totally different. They're totally different. And so for me, that's kind of how I look at it. It's not that I think that Ethereum is trash and all this. I don't. But I do look at like the nature of what I believe this is going to be in the future.
David, are there any consequences if XRP is deemed systemically important for the financial system? Are there any consequences for retail holders or people that hold XRP if that should happen?
Well, I think if there is one, it would have to fall under the accreditor investor type of classification, because one of the things, that we deal with quite a bit is, this whole idea of being an accredited investor where you have to be worth $1 million liquid outside of your principal residence. And we know the SEC has been petitioning to have that changed to $10 million or something like that, which is a significant amount. Will the average person, now I do believe that those who hold it now would be somehow grandfathered in, but they would have to probably put it in the hands, if you're not an accredited investor, you would probably need to put it in the hands of an asset manager to manage it for you if it came to that. One of the things I do believe is going to be eventually attacked in regulation is going to be self-custody. And the reason I believe that is from an officer's point of view, federal officer's point of view. So one of the roles that I played in the 25 years as a federal officer was to be a bankruptcy inspector. And so as in bankruptcy, when someone files an insolvency event, the trustee, who is the administrator of the bankruptcy, takes over the worldwide assets of the individual that's insolvent to the benefit of the unsecured creditors who file their proofs of claim, because secured creditors, of course, can go after their security, right? Their assets. However, Bankruptcy fraud is off the chain, where people are sheltering their assets. So, when you're dealing with this distributed ledger technology, you can just throw I've got $1 million sitting in all these distributed, all this crypto, and I've got it stuck on a hardware wallet that nobody knows about. How does the trustee take custody of that? Well, they can't under a current. And so, if it was normal types of securities and financial instruments, well, of course, the trustee can take custody of it. They just, go to the custodian and show them that they are now the trustee of your estate, and boom, they've got custody of it. It can be liquidated. It can be this and that, whatever. Well, they're going to start to close some of these loopholes when it comes to self-custody. Doesn't mean that we cannot have hardware wallets and custody some of our assets, but it will be, I think they're going to start limiting the amounts, just like in Europe, for instance. In Europe, it is illegal, if you can believe this, to transact in more than $3,000 of the actual legal tender, the currency issued by the central bank. It is a crime to do that. Can you imagine that? Because they believe that it's money laundering if it's more than a $3,000 payment. You cannot do it. So if you took $10,000 at it, stuffed in your mattress, and you went to buy your neighbor's car that he's selling over there on the used market, and you gave him 10 grand in cash, you just committed a crime. Wow. In Europe. Isn't that wild? And so it would not surprise me to see those type of provisions. So yeah, there might be some dangers in that. For the retail market, will they seize it? I've really debated that a lot, and I actually do not think that we will ever face a confiscation.
So how do we get to a point? Yeah, I don't think they're gonna buy out XRP or buy you out. The government. I don't think that's the reality of where we're heading, right?
But they may limit how you get the more people. When the door closes, that might be it. The arc is shut. There's no more getting on or getting in, unless you're an accredited investor. Yeah.
How do we, as individual holders, help with setting policy around these type of because these are very serious issues, right? And if the wrong policy set in the beginning, it could be catastrophic for smaller retail holders, right? Little that don't have $10 million or 20, so maybe this is outside of what we're talking about, but how do we set things right? How do we get on the right path to setting those laws, and how do we have a voice still in the future?
Well, I think it all boils down to what we believe as our democratic processes, and like, for instance, in this republic that we are in here. The fact is, the pen is still mightier than the sword. And you better if you really believe these things, well, don't just sit there complaining about it. Do like what we're doing here, have symposiums. Another thing is getting out there and supporting candidates that really do understand what this digital asset space is and are looking for fair and balanced regulatory clarity for it. And, and taking away, and maybe we even have to, petition and advocate for another form of, how would I say it? Because I don't like these, but another form of oversight than the SEC or the CFTC, because a lot of cases, these things do not fall under either one of those categories. And so, we need to be looking at, you can listen to some of these and read these white papers at the IMF and the BIS and the WEF, all about, when they're talking about, stablecoin legislation, when they're talking about, integrating, they're looking for a global standard. One of the things that I did in the federal government, because my level when I left, by the time I left, it was a fairly senior level, but needless to say is we would be administrating treaties, for countries around the wide world. Do you realize how many treaties there are between nations around the world that are not just a part of the G7 or the G20 and this and that, for the transfer of information, not just, and also for the recovery of debt and things like that? It is significant. And a lot of times we could do these investigations on individuals and corporations ex parte without even their knowledge legally. You just have to take a look at the legislation, and you'll find out that it's already written right in there that, they can, what the availability, by the way, of information on us as individuals believe it or not, you think it's governments that actually provide the big, it's not, it's the private sector. The private sector has heaps and heaps. And if you don't think that this digital asset space is, accumulating that level of data on our spending habits, lifestyles, healthcare, education, on and on and on. That's the whole basis of a digital ID anyway. They do. Now, the thing is this, they monetize it. We all have, we're all using apps, right? Like, so X and, like Facebook and all that. Well, they monetize all the information. I mean, come on. Why does a calculator calculator app on my phone need to have access to all my contacts and my text message? It's like, but people acquiesce, and it's the same kind of thing. So yeah, I think that, long-term retail, there's a market. I think a lot of people will see the potential to become really financially free if they have the ability to really hold on and really understand what they're involved with right now.
And if I can jump in on there, on that real quick as well. You touched on two points, David, that I want to kind of highlight: regulation and legislation, right? And ultimately making sure that as retail investors, as voters, what have you, that we are ultimately doing our part in ensuring that the technology can be free, can be fair, that there are no seizures of digital assets, that everyone has the ability to self-custody, whether that has limitations or not. So really that's going to depend on a couple of things. It's going to depend on ultimately, I think, kind of the viewpoint of the SEC and how that evolves over time. And I know there's speculation around the SEC potentially being overhauled with the current election that's coming up, and some what seems to be corruption potential charges around a former director of enforcement. Who knows? But how the SEC's viewpoint on crypto kind of unravels and evolves over the course of time, that might be coming up within this next election cycle. It could be a couple of years down the line. Who knows? But also making sure that as far as local jurisdictions, when it comes to electing people into Congress, electing people into Senate, that you are fully aware of their policies and their stances around digital assets. It's one of the reasons in particular why me, as someone who I'm not based in the East Coast, I'm based on the West Coast, but I'm really looking at Deaton versus Warren and finding out how that election is ultimately going to unravel, because people like John Deaton representing not just his own constituents within Massachusetts, but having been the voice for retail investors for XRP as an amici within that lawsuit with the SEC, understanding that perspective and the viewpoints around self-custody, around utilization of the assets as utility assets and not as securities. Having people that have that thorough understanding within different levels of governments, within different levels of the judiciary, is going to make the biggest difference possible. So really making sure that people are doing their research around the people that they're electing, and just making sure that they're in line with people's own personal stances on where they see self-custody, where they see the digital asset market going.
Vote Deaton if you are in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. If you're in this digital asset space, you have got to be. If you're not getting behind John Deaton, then you've missed the boat in my estimation. Yeah.
So before I get closing, our somebody in the audience did want to ask about escrow, and then we'll get closing thoughts, and we'll kind of pull the panel to the end. But what are you guys about where the current state of the escrow stands, and is there a use case around the escrow here that's going to kind of show itself here in the future over the next few years? David, I want to get your thoughts, and I'll come to Ryan.
Sure. Yep. I'll be very quick. I actually think the escrow, now I know Ripple has controlled the escrow, but we got 1,700 plus NDAs out there. And I just often have wondered, like, if all that escrow is genuinely all, Ripples.
Yeah.
Or if you've got some institutions with these NDAs that have, early on bought significant positions and are just sitting there with it, and that kind of thing. Another thing about the escrow that we always hear is, okay, every month, well, so much was been released, it's going to be dumped on the market, and then you see 80 to 90% getting re-escrowed. A lot of it is being sold. Like, you can actually go and take a look at Ripple's quarterly reports.
Yep.
And they will show you how much XRP they sold to on-demand liquidity partners. So you can see. Now, with the SEC's lawsuit, one of the big things is, of course, that prior to 2019, they were also selling their programmatic sales to exchanges. They were selling it to exchanges. And so this is one of the arguments I think they might bring up in the appeal in order to get a larger, fine other than the 125 million. But I don't see how that's going to impact retail, in that, most people that are in this space now have, bought their XRP well after 2019. It was not even sold to them directly from Ripple, right? And so the trading that goes on there. And by the way, say this too. When we see these large volumes, you're looking at what, $1.3 billion worth of XRP gets traded in a 24-hour period. Do you believe that's retail? I mean, I don't think it is. And so I think with the escrow, I do believe that it's getting slowly diminished. I think what we got now, 43 billion or 46 billion, something like that. As far as what they hold, like there's not as much even over the last couple of years as what was in there. There used to be about 50 and over 50, and now I think we're at 40 somewhere in there. And the idea is to slowly release it to the point where there is no, or at least that's what it's been purported to be, that where there will be no more escrow in that regard. And I think then at that point, I think all of the infrastructure will be in place, and I don't think there'll be really a need. Although there might be some escrow contracts, but yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if the idea is that, Ripple controls so much of the escrow that, they control the whole space, or, I'm not sure where the whole.
It would still take years, like 5 or 6 years to cycle through it all. Ryan, did you have any thoughts?
Oh yeah, it would take years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll keep this relatively quick. I know we're kind of coming up on the end of the event here.
Yeah.
So two thoughts that I want to bring up. One is around the current escrow, and David, you mentioned the potential for NDAs and other institutional investors, banks, what have you, financial instruments that potentially have reserved maybe a portion of that escrow account. That would not surprise me if that was the case. The second thing I want to bring up is I see. And maybe this is old news. Maybe I'm bringing up something that was more of an issue, a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. But there's been a lot of talk about the amount that's released from escrow in a month by month basis. A lot of it is bought back and filed right back into escrow just to keep inflation low. But I want to bring up two things. One, I work with a lot of projects and a lot of different companies that have inflation cycles for their total supply of their token at 5 years, maybe. And that's being on the conservative side. A lot of them, their token is fully unlocked after 3, maybe 4 years. And also, if I look at Ethereum has an infinite supply.
Yeah.
There is no maximum supply of Ethereum whatsoever. And there's not a lot of discourse around inflation of the network or inflation of the token that happens in the Ethereum network. So what I would probably say is, when it comes to inflationary mechanisms, $2 billion a month being released from the escrow or every quarter sounds like a lot in the grand scheme of things compared to other chains, other markets, other projects. It's not that much. And with the amount that's being bought back on that quarterly basis, we are really slow playing inflation of the XRP ledger, and it's releasing gradually. But compared to a lot of other chains, a lot of other markets, it's not nearly as fast as some people think.
Love that. So here, let's do final thoughts. Let's go to Lady Trader first, and I want to get David last here on final thoughts around the XRP ledger. Lady, I want to bring you in here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was a great spaces today. Definitely super bullish on XRP Army. I have one comment about the escrow, though. I mean, this is just one of those things that could potentially cause some issues in 2026, because 2026, when that hits, when bear market hits, we start to see a ton of FUD around every little thing. So that's when I'd be carefully watching what's going on in all the escrow activity there. But I think the fact that we have limited supply for XRP, I think that makes it another bullish use case, right? So that's great. I am excited to see where XRP would go from here. I think the growth is going to be insane. The adoption is going to be insane. This bull market, I mean, easy 10x from here. Obviously, I hate to do the price prediction, but that's a very, very, very conservative, like 10x is like a no-brainer from here. And then probably a lot more than that, but that's my very conservative take on it. But I think what an opportunity. And Versan was talking about it earlier too, that, I mean, he's so bullish, he's not selling his XRP. He's like, we are super early.
Yeah,
I'm never selling. And it's amazing because you're basically investing for that long-term,
mindset.
Yeah, long-term mindset. And I do have some XRP actually from last bull cycle that I didn't sell. It was not like the traditional XRP, but actually on Binance Smart Chain. It was in like 84 or 85 wallets or something like that from all of the smaller coins that I traded that gave you rewards to do XRP. So all of those are still there. And it's like, yeah, all of these, like what I call dust is just going up. And it's amazing to see that. So definitely excited to see what this bull run begins. But thank you so much, Sensei. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, breaking 400 people watching at one time for our panel. This has definitely been the most watched panel. So Ryan, I want to come to you here. What do you got for us for your final thoughts around the XRP ecosystem?
Yeah, around the XRP ecosystem, I know I've taken maybe a little bit of a different approach to the conversation as some others, being not necessarily a content creator in the XRP ecosystem, and working on a project that primarily focuses on a lot of EVM and Ethereum based projects and companies as well. So I have a little bit of a different perspective on this. But I talked about it really early on, the prospect of RL USD and the ability to bridge and be interoperable with the Ethereum ecosystem, I think is going to be absolutely massive for the XRP ledger. And it's going to be a gradual thing. It's not going to happen overnight. But if we're looking at the grand scheme of things, we talked about tokenized real estate and the possibility of that. That's a $300 trillion market. We talked about the different futures markets, and we've talked about derivatives all being tokenized on the XRP ledger. That isn't going to happen overnight. But what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks or a couple of months is that interoperability that's being offered from RL USD and being able to bridge onto the Ethereum network. That unlocks a $300 million market. Being on a chain that is primarily liquid through Tether as well, that's another $100 billion market. So right there in the next couple of weeks, you have exposure to these different markets that can really make a short-term impact on the XRP ledger when it comes to volume, when it comes to total value locked on chain. So I'm hesitant to say the word bullish. I know this is not exactly that kind of panel, but I'm very excited to see kind of how the transaction volume and how the total value locked on chain happens within the next couple of weeks and within the next couple of years, because there are a lot of developments happening in the long term that are fantastic, that tackle $100 trillion markets, but a couple markets coming up in the next couple of weeks here that should be really exciting to gain access to. So very excited for that. And Sensei, again, I want to thank you for hosting the panel. It's been awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you as well. Lady Trader Raw, always great talking to you as well. Thanks for having me.
We hit 420. It must be a magic number here for viewership watching. David, I want to bring you in for your final thoughts. First of all, I want to thank everybody on the panel, Versan, MetaMan X, of course, Ryan, Lady Trader, David. It's been an incredible conversation, breaking 420 views for the summit. It has been the most watched panel, so by far. So I just want to thank everybody for their time here on the Sunny that has showed up, the viewers, the people that have supported us, people working behind the scenes like JP and the team there at Cryptonairz. So I just want to thank everybody. And now, David, I want to hear your final.
Well, the first thing I want to say is it's actually fantastic to just meet a bunch of people in this space that have really, just good hearts and good minds about what it is, and to have these conversations, because, this is where we kind of we get out there, we share our thoughts, we share our ideas, we share our perspectives. We don't always have to agree, but, we're all moving forward in this space in a big, big way. And Ryan, again, I want to say thank you so much. I mean, you brought up some amazing points, I think, with relative to this space and where it's going in the future, and being, what the focus is. I think primarily the biggest thing I got from what you shared is just the focus of what, Ripple is in comparison to some of these other various ecosystems. And I 100% agree with that. I think that's exactly what my estimation is of where we're going and what Ripple's all about. And Lady Trader Raw, well, you got a great avatar there, but it was good to have a chance to be on a panel with you and Crypto Sensei. Thank you so much for inviting me and that. With respect to where XRP is going, I think this has the potential, really I do, to transform people's lives long term. And I think that, it's kind of like, I'm 56. I don't mind saying that. And I remember, when I was a kid, I was about 14, my dad gave me my first computer. It was a Timex Sinclair. It was an 8K of RAM, if you can believe it, And I remember when the home computer was out, and most people thought it was a toy. It was just going to be a toy, just a novelty. Well, imagine if you had to put a little bit of dough in a little known company called Microsoft back then, or even Apple. It would have revolutionized your lives. And then, of course, the internet was coming out when, we were having kids around that time. And I remember, I don't know if you guys remember US Robotics and their 56K, modem and all that kind of stuff. And if you could get 5.6K a second in transfer speeds. Well, most people really didn't think the internet, they didn't have the vision for it. Didn't have the vision for it. So the perspective I'm trying to share here is have a vision for what the future is going to unfold. Because even the smallest amounts in some of those early burgeoning technologies in the beginning in these internet companies, you think of Amazon, Alphabet, and different ones, and before that, there were even others, would have revolutionized your life generationally. And I absolutely believe that this digital asset space, distributed ledger technology, going to swallow the internet whole. Yep. I think Ripple and XRP Ledger is going to get a big piece of that pie. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Now, hey, Versan is a very close friend of mine, and he may never sell any of his XRP, but I got more life behind me than I probably do ahead of me. So my goals are a little bit different. And so I might be letting go of some of my XRP when I see it at various prices, because the greatest commodity that one of us have, and all those listening, is time. If you saw your portfolio appreciate to the point where it could revolutionize your life and the life of perhaps your children going forward, where, you're able to do things you could have never done before, live it. Now, don't let anyone else dictate what that number should be for you, following all these price predictions or whatever. Get to a place where you know that on your inside. And if it comes to you that say, hey, I'm not going to sell any of my XRP, I'm going to invest in these other things, I'm going to sell that, that's fine too. But I would say this, have a strategic plan. Don't just let this happen to you. Have a plan. And, because I will say this, in my experience anyway, the people that don't realize their goals, it's not because they're unattainable. It's because they've lost the resolve to do it. They lost the resolve to do it. And they just did not have the stick-to-itiveness to follow it through to the very end. And I've just seen so many iterations of that. So I really think that this space represents the best opportunity that most of us will ever see generationally. Really, I do. And that's what I think about it.
I appreciate you, David. Keep learning, keep growing, keep researching, right? And if you hit that generational wealth, have a plan for the money so you don't lose it all. All right, guys, this concludes the XRP tokenization panel, hitting 428 viewers. Thank you so much to everybody that spent time on their Sunday to watch us. You can watch the replay, obviously, when we're done. We do have one more panel coming up for the Cryptonairz KOL Summit. Blue chips you should watch out for. You can go to join Cryptonairz for a 30-day free trial of our alpha community. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much, Ryan, Lady Trader, David from Digital Outlook, and Versan and MetaMan X. Thank you all so much. God bless you. Take care, guys. Aloha.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. 400.